Good morning, Warzone kids. That's my term for those of us like myself who grew up in a childhood that was more like a guerrilla war than it was a supportive nursery. I'm a child sex abuse survivor, and as an adult, I live with borderline personality disorder. I'm a recovering addict and bulimic. And Warzone kids is my term for folks like me, where the Jenga tower of our psyche, that's how I see our soul. You start off in life and it's a solid block made of smaller blocks, but that Jenga tower becomes more unstable with every turn in the game. And if you lived in a world of sexual abuse, physical abuse, emotional abuse, psychological abuse, societal abuse, racial abuse, all that abuse, harm, and neglect takes pieces out of the bottom of your Jenga tower and puts it on top. And by the time you reach adulthood, your Jenga tower is a swaying, shaky thing. And so this channel, A Pilgrim's Progress, is about my own journey toward the Western lands, a place of peace and wholeness where I learn and become what I am. And I call it a pilgrimage because I'm there now, and the journey toward the place where I am now will never stop. You learn and become what you are day by day. And life as a Warzone kid, life is what we have to live right now in the present moment, not in the past, not in the future, but right now. And I'm doing a few pieces now on things that I've written. And as a writer, I'm a kind of guy, like all I can do, I see this now looking back on things I've done, all I can do is give you a snapshot of where I am right now. That's what each piece of writing that I've done has done. Give you a snapshot of where I am. So I wrote Fury and Grace, that's in the previous video. That's a memoir. Anybody who's the kind of writer like this that kind of writes because they're impelled to, many people like that, the first thing they write's a memoir. And there you have it. Every writer has, they say 250,000 bad words they have to get out first. I don't think they're bad, but I think that you do have to clear out a lot of brush out of your mind before you can, before I had to clear a lot of brush out of my mind before I could really try to write something that came from my heart, not just the stories I told myself about myself. And Fury and Grace got out about 90,000 of those words. Next thing I wrote, I'll call it my pandemic project. It's called Finding the Pearl in the Storm. And like I said in the last video, I've spent about 20 years of my life in and around organized labor campaigns. I was the president of a union for about 10 years. And I did 3 years as, I was treasurer for 3 years, I was president for 6 years, I was a shop steward for a few years. And I did a 3-year hitch as president of a state chapter of the AFL-CIO, and deeply immersed in that world. And I spent close to 10 years as a consultant on the management side. Some people experience that as a betrayal because I changed sides in that whole thing. It doesn't feel like that to me, because I'm mostly just a campaigner. I was a campaigner, and I understand that world. I was a campaigner on the union side. Now I'm a campaigner on the management side. It kind of feels like being a ronin. A ronin, this is a Japanese term for samurai without a master. I just kind of know how these campaigns work, and I try to experience my fellow human creatures as my fellow human creatures, no matter what side of that divide they're on. So my pandemic project was I wanted to explain how these organized labor campaigns work to myself. I wanted to see if I understood it. And so I wrote a book about that called Finding the Pearl in the Storm. And really, that book is about, it's about how to maintain your humanity in those circumstances. That's what it's about between the lines. And it's about how I understand these campaigns. They're about human dynamics. And I've always been very taken with Chinese military strategy. Books like The Art of War, The 100 Strategies, what is it called? The 100 Rules of War, The 36 Strategies of Ancient China. the Tao Te Ching, Chuanzi, Leizi, Weizi, Taoist writers, Chinese military writers like that. And that's how I understand these campaigns, because they're fluid things. So finding the pearl in the storm is about organized labor campaigns. It's definitely written from the management perspective, but I'll tell you, if you're a union organizer, you could pick it up and it would give you a very thoroughgoing understanding of how these campaigns work from that perspective, from the union side perspective, because they just work the way they work. And I love that book, and I'll stand by it. To this day, I work in that world. I apply the lessons in that book when I have a consulting gig, when I'm on a campaign. I'll tell you what it doesn't have is anything really like that would make it a useful, like, here's your 3-point plan. There's nothing in it like that. It's a book by and for people that want to understand complex human dynamics around them. That's what it's about. I did the audiobook for that one. It's pretty short. I think that book's about 30,000 words or something like that. The audiobook is about 3 hours long, something like that. I'll stand by it. And if you want to know, if you're ever involved in an organized labor campaign on either side, and you want to read about it from like a perspective, which is basically me trying to write something like The Art of War as it applies in these campaigns, go read that book. It'll be really interesting to you. You'll find that it applies once you get your mind out of the framework of like looking for the 3 rules to do it, or what you should, here's the 5 steps to success. It ain't like that, because that stuff lies. There is no 3-step plan that's not more or less mindless. But you'll understand the dynamics of how these things work. And I love doing the audiobook, and I'll stand by that book to this day. It's a good book, and I'll put a link to the audiobook and the printed work and the Kindle work. I think the Kindle version is probably free. But that's Finding the Pearl in the Storm. And that's my story about that. This ain't very long, but the book ain't very long. And it's kind of the least personal, the least, it's the least personal of the things I've written. But go have a listen. It'll keep you company for a couple hours on the trail. It's a beautiful day, Pilgrim. Let's get a move on.